Hey guys, this is Paul from PhoneArena, and in my hands I have the Xiaomi Mi 4C, a sort of a discount flagship if you will. The Mi 4C is sold mainly in China, but can be found at various online retailers for about $240 before tax. This comes off as pretty affordable, especially considering the fact that even the standard edition, which we have right here, comes with a Qualcomm Snapdragon 808 processor, 2 GB of RAM, and a 13 megapixel 5 megapixel camera combo. All of that for a pretty low price tag. So how does it perform? Let's check it out. Let's first check out how the phone looks and feels. At the price point, we can't really complain that it's made out of plastic, and it actually looks really nice. The back has this slight arch to fit better in the palm, and its corners are a bit edgy, giving it this stark, elegant look without actually being sharp to the touch. The plastic is matte, not glossy, but still manages to attract fingerprints. The front panel looks really nice too. When everything is off, it is almost entirely black, with the Mi logo on the top left here. The capacitive buttons can be seen as soon as the screen lights up, and they have your typical Xiaomi twist to their looks, as you can see down here. The power button has a nice click to it, but is a bit shallow, and the volume rocker is even shallower and wobbly. That will cause some minor nuisances when using the phone. All in all, it's nice to look at, nice to handle, a pretty good design for what is priced as a mid-range handset. The Mi 4C has a 5-inch IPS LCD display with a 1080 by 1920 pixel resolution. This brings its pixel per inch density to 441, very crisp. Looking at highly detailed images is a pleasure, and reading small print is a breeze. In terms of color reproduction, the display manages to miss every target on the sRGB scale, with most colors being slightly off and slightly more saturated than they should be. This sounds bad on paper, but we enjoyed the vivid popping colors of the display. Granted, they aren't accurate, so we would not recommend shopping for a dress on this screen. What we did not enjoy was the high color temperature, which gave us this cold-looking display with an ever-present blue or even slightly purplish tint. This was most noticeable in dark environments. Thankfully, the settings menu has a reading mode option, which allows us to put some reds in the display, up to taste. In terms of brightness, the display did not disappoint. Hitting 456 nits at maximum, we had no trouble using the Xiaomi Mi 4C under direct sunlight. At minimum, it reached 1 nit, which is pretty much the best you can get for nighttime readers. In a nutshell, the display is vivid, crisp, detailed, and can be used in almost any environment. The colors are a bit off, but at this price point, that's probably considered nitpicking. So far, so good. Let's see how the phone actually operates. Now, we have some bad news here. If you're to buy the Xiaomi Mi 4C outside of Asia, you will most probably do so through a third-party retailer. And Google search has told us that such units will often be tampered with and had a lot of malware installed. We don't know where in the supply line this happens, obviously it could be anywhere, but our Mi 4C was one of the unfortunate ones. Long story short, the antivirus app that the phone came pre-installed with immediately warned us that half of the other pre-installed apps were malware. Imagine that. After uninstalling and disabling everything we could, the phone would still be constantly warm, and it would burn through 40 to 50% battery in 8 hours of nothing but standby. And there was this fishy YouTube app which had the most archaic interface, and we just couldn't remove it or update it. It had permissions to delete apps or install apps, which we are pretty sure is not what YouTube should be doing on a phone. So, as much as we'd love to review a phone in the state that it arrives in, we had to scrub all of this and flash a stock MIUI ROM on the Mi 4C. This is a good time to give Xiaomi some praise. There were one-click tools for everything in the MIUI forums, and in the matter of a couple of hours of reading up and downloading the right stuff, we were able to flash a MIUI ROM easily, together with Google Apps, without having to root the phone. Now, the stock UI, which we flashed directly from the Xiaomi forums, also had its own fair share of bloat. quite a lot of it, but we were allowed to uninstall most of the apps, thankfully, and disable the rest. So, onto the actual interface. One of the first things that is going to hit you is that it just looks beautiful. Many fault it for copying Apple's iOS, and we can certainly see where that's coming from, but MIUI 7 is far from the worst offender in this field. So we have some pretty polished looks, blur effects, and a lot of attention to the tiniest detail. Just look at how the text in the camera app behaves as we tilt the device. Enough foogling though. How does it function? There is an ever-present sluggishness in the interface's response. While it doesn't lag randomly or stutter, it does have a constant delay in its response to input. This could drive you insane if you are used to a snappier interface. Otherwise, we found it to be pretty stable throughout. Heavy games, web browsing, everything reacted fairly predictable throughout our usage time. MIUI is a zealot when it comes to killing background processes, and we had a huge problem with our chat notifications not coming up. Now, first of all, to allow pop-ups for apps like Facebook's Messenger, one needs to go into Settings, Installed Apps, Messenger, scroll down to Permissions Manager and press on the Allow Display pop-up window. This is disabled by default for every app you install, which means that every time you install a new chat client, you will need to do this. Afterwards, we had to make sure that the app does not get blocked by the security manager, so we had to go to the security app, permissions, auto start, and allow the Facebook Messenger to auto start. After completing these two steps, however, we still had an issue with the phone not receiving chat notifications. Calls and SMS texts were okay, but we found that if the phone spends some time in standby, it clears some of its background processes, which stops us from getting push notifications. And yes, we did create a custom battery profile with the clean memory option set to never. Some of our avid readers have pointed us towards yet another option that needs to be enabled in order for a simple chat app to work as expected. We had to go to Settings, Additional Settings, Battery and Performance, Manage Apps Battery Usage, choose Apps to Restrict, and make sure that the desired apps are not restricted. Now, how is any of this user-friendly? If we wish to get our chat notifications on time, there are 4 things we need to do in 4 separate, complex, and sometimes illogical menus. And 3 of these steps we need to repeat every time we install a new chat app. And in the end, does it actually work? Let's test it right now. In all honesty, we've done this test multiple times. The Mi 4C will usually react for about 3 minutes after we send the message. So it doesn't cut you off the world entirely, provided you have performed the 4 steps as mentioned above. As a result of this ordeal, we just didn't feel confident that the device in our pocket would deliver us messages in a timely manner, and we paranoidly checked it in regular intervals, just to make sure that we haven't missed anything. Now, aside from the notifications issue, we did not find any other serious offenses in MIUI 7. In fact, the interface is exotic and beautiful, and if you don't mind pampering it and working for it, you may just end up enjoying using it. So, the Xiaomi Mi 4C packs a hexa-core Qualcomm Snapdragon 808 coupled with 2 GB of RAM. The phone held its own in various benchmarks, and we can honestly say that we felt comfortable pushing the processor with various tasks and apps without worrying about crashes or inconsistencies. Of course, there is the ever-present interface sluggishness, which we will mention again. Though we are not sure whether we should fault the processor or if it's a case of poor software optimization here. We will lean towards the latter. We also found that the phone is very slow when installing apps from the Play Store, not downloading, but the actual installation process took quite longer than it usually does on other phones, so we're not quite sure what's going on there. The standard version of the Mi 4C comes with 16 GB of internal memory and 2 GB of RAM, while the slightly more expensive advanced version has 32 GB of storage and 3 GB of RAM. Neither variant has an SD card slot for expansion, so you are stuck with the internal memory. The operating system takes up about 4 GB of it, so keep this in mind too. Browsing the web with the Mi 4C is a breeze. Its stock browser is not too bad at all, and dealt with the heavy websites we threw at it rather well. We used Google's Chrome for most of our time with the phone, and we have no complaints in terms of performance, loading times and scrolling. Of course, the extra crisp pixel density on the screen also helped a lot when having to read text without zooming in and out all the time. Now, the Mi 4C does support 4G LTE, but if you're planning to buy one, do check the bands it supports. Our research didn't show us a single Mi 4C unit that can run LTE on any of the US carriers. However, if you're using it in most countries in Europe, you should be fine. We were seriously impressed by the photos that the Mi 4C's 13-megapixel snapper is able to take. While the camera is not without its faults, the images definitely have a quality that is well above a $240 price tag. Details are represented in a very natural way, without too much over-sharpening going on, and colors are very true to real life. Outdoors, the sky in the background will often actually have its natural blue color instead of being a glowing white blotch, and the camera will still try to squeeze out the best it could from the darker spots in the scene. HDR mode works pretty well too, successfully balancing exposures throughout an image. More often than not, however, it tends to oversaturate and overblow the colors. Most of the times this gives a very vivid, epic-like effect to the images, but it can also end up looking a bit too fake and try-hard. Manual mode, or Pro mode, is a must-have on all of 2015 smartphones, and the Xiaomi Mi 4C packs it too, giving you manual access to shutter speed, ISO, white balance and focus. It's pretty easily accessible, which we do appreciate, and turning the various dials is not buried under a plethora of gestures, which is a must for the user-friendliness of a manual mode. Unfortunately, taking a steady night shot with the Mi 4C's auto mode turned out to be an impossible task most of the time, as the camera would have its shutter set to too slow, which would result in blurry photos no matter how much we tried to stand still. On top of that, it also had some issues of getting the right focus during the night. Video capture was a bit of a letdown. While the phone can take clips in crisp 1080p quality, it certainly struggles with getting the focus right. You have a continuous autofocus mode, which will often dance around trying to figure out what it's supposed to focus on, and the manual tap to focus, which will sometimes still end up blurring the object you are trying to capture. For best effect, the phone shouldn't be moved around a lot and the object should be at least at a medium distance away. If you do manage to get the right focus going, you will be treated to the same nice details and accurate colors that the pictures have. The selfie camera of the Mi 4C is also pretty impressive. It packs a 5-megapixel sensor, which really did not struggle with capturing our faces, even with direct light behind us. It works great for video chats, we tested it with Skype, and for that personal memorabilia that you may love to take. Okay man, I gotta go. Doing a review here. So unprofessional. The call quality of the Mi 4C is not too bad. The earpiece delivers loud and clear voices without too much digitalization, so we had no trouble understanding our colors. However, the other party was treated to a worse sound quality. The Mi 4C's microphone is a bit weak and our voices were heavily digitalized. Our words would easily get garbled if we didn't speak loud, clear and articulate, something we had to be ever mindful of while making calls. The 5-inch display is probably not the best for prolonged movie watching, purely because of the small size. We did find the Mi 4C's vivid screen to be great for viewing YouTube and social media clips, as well as any other type of pictures. The oversaturated colors may not be super accurate, but they certainly lend themselves well when you want the images on the rather small display to come alive. The speaker will not blow you away, but it sounds balanced and does not have the sharp, unpleasant spike in the highs that we are all too used to hearing. You can get a satisfying sound out of the phone when you absolutely have nothing to plug it in to listen music to. The Mi 4C packs a 3080 mAh battery, which sounds pretty generous considering the 5-inch screen and the hexa-core processor, but honestly the phone's results on our battery life tests were not at all impressive. With its screen on and constantly cycling through web content, the Mi 4C only lasted about 6 hours and 16 minutes. That's pretty average. It does, however, have a pretty good grip on the battery charge when it's in standby. Remember how we mentioned that MIUI loves to kill background processes? Well, this actually has its good side when it comes to battery life. If you only sparsely use your phone for occasional chats, phone calls, or even a Skype call or two, the Mi 4C can last you almost 2 days with ease. When its screen is off, the battery percentages just don't slip away, thanks to all of these battery-saving options that MIUI has built in. So if your phone is at 40% when you put it in your pocket, you can be confident that it's only going to drop down to a maximum of 39% when you take it out of your pocket again after an hour. Bottom line, great for casual users who want a phone that will easily last through the day with regular use. Not so great for heavy users who constantly have the phone in their hand. The Xiaomi Mi 4C is elegant, compact, exotic and packs a nice hardware punch under its hood. All of that for about $240 before tax. It does not come without its faults though. If you get this phone, be prepared to pamper it, read up on forums and generally bang your head against the wall until you can get it to work the way you want it to work. It's kind of a double-edged sword, but if you're on a budget, it's hard to overlook this handset. This concludes our review of the Xiaomi Mi 4C. If you want more phone news, reviews and tips, do visit PhoneArena.com. I have been Paul, thanks for watching, until next time.